Howdy, folks. Welcome to the podcast Iron. My name is Laura Mullen Vermilia, and on this podcast, I interview members of the cast iron art community in order to inspire, educate, and spread ideas about iron casting and cast iron art. Today on the show, our guest is Stephen Coles. Steve is a sculptor based in the UK, where he and his partner, Necole Schmitz, run a company called Coles Castings. And at the moment, they primarily get their iron for casting from the operation of their self-built waste oil furnaces. The story that Steve tells that leads up to his development of this specific waste oil furnace design is quite a ride, so buckle up and get ready. Steve, thank you so much for sharing all of your stories from the many iron adventures you've been on, but also thank you for being so open about the technology of your waste oil furnaces and how you produce crucible iron. I think it's something that many of us are interested in, either to add to a personal studio setup or just to stay up to date on the cutting edge of how cast iron art and the movement may be able to pivot as sustainability initiatives continue to grow and develop in our society. Your innovation, ingenuity, and intelligence will most definitely help us go a long way. Now, just really quickly before we get into the interview, I have to mention our wonderful sponsors of the show. So firstly, the podcast Iron Show is sponsored in part by individual supporters on Patreon. And yeah, that's about 20 to 25 of our friends and colleagues that have personally signed up to support the podcast as a Patreon member and help me afford the production costs of doing everything that goes into making this show possible. And I'd also like to thank the top supporters of today's show, which are the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance, Sloss Metal Arts, and the Metal Museum. These fantastic organizations provide a large portion of the funding that's keeping my ability to produce these episodes afloat. So I just want to take a few moments to introduce them to you and tell you some of the upcoming things that they've got that are very exciting on their horizon. So a very meaningful top supporter of the podcast Iron is the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance. And they are an organization that gears their efforts for iron casting artists in the western states of the US. And their organization's goals are to educate, demonstrate, and exhibit cast iron art in the western region of the US. One of the ways that they accomplish this goal is by hosting a conference every 2 years. And this upcoming Western Conference will be held in El Cajon, California. That's just a hop, skip, and a jump away from San Diego. The official dates are Wednesday, October 30th through Sunday, November 3rd. So it's right, Halloween weekend. So get it on your calendar and start reaching out to your friends about carpooling or travel plans. If you're going to fly, I'm going to fly, but look into local hotels or going in on an Airbnb with your favorite crew. And I always have to point out that you don't have to live in the West to attend the Western Conference. You can live anywhere. They just happen to hold their conferences in the West. So wherever you are, you should definitely make the trip. They'll love to have you, and I'll be there, so I'll love to see you as well. And it looks like the carnival event will take place again at this conference, so you can get your fix on bathtub rides. And of course, there will be a performance pour night, a production pour, as well as an exhibition, panels, demos, networking, all of the things. So a big thank you to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance and their board members for the support of this podcast. And for more information about this fantastic organization and the upcoming conference, visit their website, which is wciaa.org. And you can also shoot a message to the email address wciaa@hotmail.com with any questions that you may have, or if you want to be added to the mailing list. Another longtime top supporter of the podcast Iron is Sloss Metal Arts, which is a national center for iron casting and metal art. Based in Birmingham, Alabama, they host our national conference on contemporary cast iron art and practices, and that's every 2 years. And now that the 2025 National Conference planning has officially kicked off, you're going to want to follow Sloss Metal Arts and NCCCIAP on Instagram to keep up to date on all of the things Sloss related and conference related. But I'm super excited to announce that all of the calls for the 2025 conference are now open, and you'll be able to apply to be a guest furnace or to participate in the student cupola competition, but also the calls include applications for if you want to do a performance at the conference, or if you're interested in leading a workshop or a demo, or if you have a panel or presentation idea that you would like to facilitate. So on the NCCC IAP website, all of the information is available for each call, and also the information for how to apply. And the due date for all of the calls across the board are going to be on Thursday, October 31st. So seriously, go to nccciap.com to check out all of these opportunities. And while you're there, sign up to be on the email list. That way, all the information will be sent directly to your email inbox. So guys, let's help make this next conference in the spring of 2025 be the biggest and best one yet. Thank you, Sloss Metal Arts, for your support of this podcast and also for hosting us at your site for the national conference. Lastly, another supporter of today's episode is the National Ornamental Metal Museum. The Metal Museum, located in the heart of Memphis, Tennessee, is the only museum of its kind dedicated to preserving, promoting, and advancing the art and craft of metalwork. The Metal Museum offers a unique experience with a rich exhibition schedule, a growing permanent collection, an on-site blacksmith shop and foundry, and education and outreach programming. From demos and classes to master workshops and 2-year apprenticeships, this museum offers vast opportunities for all skill levels. So the Metal Museum just actually hosted their annual fire casting conference at the end of this past May, and it was open to students as well as emerging and advanced artists, and I am personally so jealous of everyone who was able to go this year because I really hate missing it. So if this sounds like something that you'd be interested in attending next year, reserve the last week in May on your calendar for the event and sign up, buy a ticket as soon as you can, because there is a limited amount of slots to be able to go to this event. But also, the Metal Museum's exhibition calendar happens to be in a season of casting. And they started off strong in February with the exhibition titled Branching Out, which explores the fascinating ways that mentors, students, and foundries share knowledge in paths of growth that resemble a family tree. That exhibition is open now and will be open until September 8th. But also in September, immerse yourself in the works of master metalsmith Preston Jackson. His exhibition, titled A Hidden Culture, critiques today's society through a methodologized Civil War-era American South. And if you don't know, the Master Metalsmith is a title given to a different metal artist every year to celebrate their career and their body of work in conjunction with the Metal Museum's Repair Days event. And this is held every October. So this year, the festivities for Repair Days will take place from Thursday, October 17th through Saturday, October 20th. And what happens is community members from all over will bring metal items to the museum to have them restored, reshaped, retinned, or whatever else needs to be done to them for them to be brought back to life. And expert metalsmiths will be performing these repairs. They come from across the country and they all travel to Memphis and perform the repairs on site. And the funds that are raised during this weekend event help support the museum's annual programming, like new exhibitions, the apprenticeship program, and their after-school program called Forging the Future. And I'm excited to tell you that all casters, even iron casters, are considered metalsmiths at this event. And so if you're interested in participating as a volunteer to help fix things, or if you are interested in having any metal objects repaired yourself, visit their website, metalmuseum.org, and check out the Repair Days page for more details about how to sign up to be a volunteer or what to expect for the schedule during the event. And also follow them on Instagram at Metal Museum, because they post about their events and their exhibitions regularly. So it's a great way to stay up to date on what they've got going on. Thank you so much to the Metal Museum for supporting today's episode. So finally, let's get into this conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and please enjoy. Well, Steve Coles, welcome. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a genuine pleasure to be here.
I'm just like, I really want to get into the meat of it really quickly, but I'm gonna hold myself back because I need you to do a little bit of an introduction for me and for everyone else. So, Steve, who the hell are you anyways?
Well, so my name's Stephen Coles. I'm a sculptor based in the UK, and I'm a founder and iron caster. So I've sort of been working and studying between the UK and America over a number of years, and about 5 years ago, with my partner Necole Schmitz, we founded Cole's Castings, which is at the moment like a small scale fine art bespoke heritage foundry. So we take on like a range of commissions, and yeah, we use waste oil furnaces to basically be able to offer a range of metals from aluminium all the way up to cast iron, and yeah, we produce our iron out of a crucible as opposed to a cupola. Yeah, but that's me anyway.
That's the distilled essence so far. All right. Well, thank you for that. And I I'm really interested in the furnace information and how you kind of came to that and why you're doing it and the information that we can learn from you. But I also want to know a little bit about your childhood and I want to dig deep into kind of like who you are as a person. So, could you give us a story or two about your early childhood and maybe how you something that happened or some things that maybe you think helped shape you into the person that you've become today?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I'm from a county called Dorset in the UK in England. It's sort of down on the south coast. We live about 20 minutes from Stonehenge,
Oh,
to give some like context,
wow.
and Stonehenge is sort of right next to Salisbury, which is like the nearest city to us. And yeah, the cathedral at Salisbury is like 800 years old. We just had some family out from America, and you know, people always want to see those sorts of things because they're like really interesting and fascinating and kind of inspirational. But yeah, when we took them around, it's like you know, you have sort of the people like interned and buried within the cathedral, and you know, you look at the stones, and there's like somebody there who was buried like 5 years before the State of the Union was formed and stuff. And because they're from America, you know, people are just like, oh wow, you know, like this is intense.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, so it's kind of like a small town we grew up in, and my dad was an agricultural machinery salesman, so like tractors, like John Deere's, new you know, Fords, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And my mum, she comes from a farming background, so my gran, ran a dairy farm,
Okay.
and so that was her background. So we have a 600-acre farm, which the cattle have kind of been thinned down because me and my brothers and sister have kind of different interests. But yeah, we've got a herd of about 30 cattle at the minute. But at the peak, it was about 400, and they were all like organic beef cattle,
Mm.
uh, which was yeah, pretty interesting. And I mean, farming's like one of those occupations where I just have nothing but respect for people who do it because it's like a super tough, dangerous way to make a living.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's all very romantic and nice, but it didn't really interest me enough to want to
Yeah.
pursue that. And so yeah, so I wanted to pursue something else. And I think also we were quite lucky that where we lived with the schools and stuff, like all the way through schooling. So there wasn't like anything specific, but you know, all the schools I kind of went to, you know, music was considered an important thing, and the visual arts, and as well as the sciences, and you know, English and maths and everything. But I think it was just having that exposure to like more creative outlets, which yeah, which is really like a nice way to spend your time and to like do things. Um, and so yeah, yeah, you know, we had like a happy childhood. I'm the eldest of four.
Hmm.
We're all born within 5 years of each other, so yeah, like it was pretty intense siblings and
Yeah.
stuff.
All together,
Um,
all the
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, like yeah, that was all good. And And then yeah, I was kind of thinking about it because like I said, it wasn't like a seminal moment as such, but I think like being exposed to like that kind of practical upbringing, kind of maybe subliminally informed uh, the fact that I was going to be a sculptor another day. Because basically what happened was I was at so our version of high school, which is secondary school,
Yeah.
and I don't know uh, what the name of the legal examination is in America, where like you take the exam and then you either go into work or you go on to study for uni. But over here it's called a GCSE, and so I took those exams and then I wasn't really sure. I mean, I've kind of been like that quite a bit, but not really sure exactly knowing what I want to do and stuff,
Hmm.
and just kind of being open to. I mean, my partner Nicole says just being like open to the universe or whatever, which I think is a really
Yes.
positive way to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I kind of stayed on to take my A levels, and those are the sort of examinations you take to then get into a university in the UK. And I lasted about a semester because and then I had a gap here and then I went to art college, and the reason was because I had this art teacher at school who he was kind of wonderful and he gave me a really interesting education, but I think it might have been for like slightly the wrong reasons. I think he might have been a genius, but I wasn't really aware of it at the time. Like to give you an example, he
Yeah.
so one year he graded all of the students' textbooks, like your sketchbooks you fill out and folio and everything. He went to the top flight of stairs of the main house and threw them down the stairs. And the ones that got to the bottom were the ones that got the highest grade because his thinking was that the weight and the tone of the material inside would carry it through the air to get down there. So
Yeah.
it was a bit kind of like his methods were slightly unconventional, but anyway,
But I
we've
bet
been.
he was open to the universe.
I think he was, yeah,
He
yeah,
was, sounds like he
I,
was.
I think
And you know
but
what? There's something beautiful about that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I
no,
hope you
definitely.
got a good grade. I hope to God you got a good grade.
I think I got about halfway downstairs. I'm not sure, but
Okay,
but
so
um,
passing.
but yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it was fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was just like other small things like I remember we did a drawing exercise where like he wanted us to like draw with sticks. Um, and like we really did this exercise at college, and I remember when we started doing it, because I was like, oh, I've done this before, but at college they had like a brush on the stick, and you dip
Okay.
it in like ink, and then you'd make like big gestural drawings.
Right.
Well, he put charcoal on the end of the sticks and then took us outside into the landscape. So you had like 20 kids basically chasing paper around a field, trying not to like rip it up and all this sort of stuff. But anyway, he was set to take us on a trip to Paris, and kind of up to this point, um, you're kind of a teenager and you're in your own thing and
Mhm.
not necessarily like having that much exposure outside of your bubble or whatever.
Yeah.
About a week before the trip, he was hanging some paintings in the school chapel for the Christmas Carol service because this was just before Christmas, and the ladder slipped and he fell off the ladder and he broke his leg. And he was okay, but he properly broke it. I think he broke it in like two
Oh
places or
my
something. And,
gosh.
and the short was that he couldn't take us on the trip, and so there were two TAs that basically took 15 teenagers to Paris because it had all been booked and paid for, and
Right.
pretty much turned us loose. And it was great because we went to like all these galleries during the daytime, like the Louvre and Rodin's house and the Musée d'Orsay and everything. And then in the evenings, I remember one night me and a friend got lost, and I think we got back at like 11:30 midnight or something, snuck into the halls, and
Wow.
but we acknowledged it. And apparently we weren't the worst ones, so that was
Good.
fine. But I just got back from that, and it was just like I don't know. I think there's like art seems to be the way to go, and there's more interesting stuff happening. So yeah, so based off of that, I finished out that year and then applied to art college because a friend had gone down there to Bournemouth,
Hmm.
and it was a really nice program. It was like a 2 year um, program, and it was just like a general kind of because sorry, in the UK, the way the undergrad is structured is that you have your foundation year,
Okay.
and then but that's completely separate from your sophomore, junior, senior years. So you have to reapply to the institution that you study at, and you're actively encouraged to apply to a different institution. So the foundation year is very much separate from the broader program because it's all like a 3-year program.
Oh, interesting.
And
Okay.
yeah, and that was really good because they basically covered everything from like fashion and textiles through to photography,
Hmm.
through to sculpture. And I went there doing sort of painting when I got there,
Hmm.
um, and a bit of photography and stuff because that's what I'd done at school.
Hmm.
And we had this sculpture elective, and um, I remember I wanted to I cast a piece of concrete out of a tennis ball. And it was like the first cast I ever made. I think I've still got it knocking around somewhere for a piece. And yeah, it kind of worked, and it was in a plaster mold and everything. But then we went to a show, and they had these bronze potatoes,
Oh,
and
yeah.
and I couldn't work out how they made them or how they finished them. Like it just didn't make any sense or register to me that like this was a thing in metal and how you make it. And so it really tweaked my interest. And then we had like I said, we had to reapply to then carry on with the program.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we went to like a freshers fair, and it was up in London. And I went in, and the head of the program I went to, who was a guy called Andy Griffiths, who was in Wales, who's also known as Griff. He passed away a couple of years ago, which was really unfortunate. But he was at this booth, and he looked me dead in the eye, and he said, "Fashion or sculpture?" And I was like, "Well, probably sculpture." He's like, "Well, look at this TV." And they had two screens running, and one had like a catwalk kind of thing going on it,
Uh-huh.
and the other one had a bronze pour. And I was just like, "Oh wow, that's really interesting." And so yeah, and he's like, "Well, yeah, if you want to come over and like have a look." And so yeah, my dad I drove over with my dad, and we turned up on a day to look around like the sculpture workshop in the departments, and they were having their bronze pour, which so at the end of the first term in Wales, or when I was there about 20 years ago, they had a bronze casting project where you made a medal and cast it, and then you finished it, and then it went into it's called the British Arts Medal Society. They have like a student contest every year, and it's exhibited nationally and everything. And so that's what they were working on. But to actually see them like because they used the Ludo
Yeah.
Italian method when I was
Hmm.
there, so
Like
they had a big car
investment.
kiln.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a big car kiln they like rolled out, and there
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
10 or 12 people there, and they were wrapping jute scrim and plaster around all these
Yeah.
things and rolling them into the pit. And then yeah, they had a tipping, like a gas tipping furnace,
Okay.
and they
Yeah.
pitched the metal in a crucible.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so they poured everything off, and like yeah, it just looked really
Uh,
intriguing. So,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, so I applied there, and yeah, got accepted, which was great. But when I went into the program, the iron casting didn't exist in the program yet, and
Mm.
so I was just like kind of yeah, learning foundry because that's what I wanted to specialize in. And that first year was really interesting because we did a lot of like a lot of woodwork
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of carving and a lot of reductive and additive processes. So we did stone carving and blacksmithing and
Mm-hmm.
steel fabrication and yeah, I had so there was Andy who kind of led the foundry side of it, and then the steel fabricating tutor is a guy called Robert Harding. He's a really interesting guy, and yeah, he was very much of the opinion that if you have access to equipment and specialist equipment to make stuff, that's great. But also, like, here's a grinder, here's a stick welder, like,
Yeah. Bare
and here are
minimum.
hand tools. Like, when you get out into the real world, this is what you're going to be working with to
Yeah.
start with
Yeah.
in your studio, and so this is the level we want to like show you, how to work with, and so that's what we did, which really like stuck with me through like building the furnaces and building the shop and everything else. And anyway, the end of the first year, the technician there, who was a guy called Roy, he was retiring, and so we gave him a retiring do, and someone baked him a cheesecake. Yeah, he was happy as he like. He went off
Yeah.
into the sunset. And then the following year, we had this guy called Bob Booth turn up, who was he'd been working up at a foundry in London called AB Fine Arts, and they take on like a lot of the big British sculptors like Tracy Emin get to work cast there. Damien Hirst, I think Damien Hirst has moved on somewhere else
Yeah,
now, but
but yeah.
and so, but because he came into the program, all of a sudden there was this kind of energy going around, and
Uh-huh.
this was back in 2005.
Okay.
And then in '06, it was going to be the fifth international conference on contemporary
Cast iron.
cast iron art.
Yeah.
They didn't have the performance and practices at that point, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it was going to be in Ironbridge,
Right.
uh, and basically Griff, it was we were in this like small lecture block, and Griff came in. And it was like I called a formal meeting to tell you all very informally that we want to do this thing. There's no credit for it. It won't be recognized for anything. So it's completely off your own back if you want to do it. But is anyone interested in working with cast iron and casting iron? And we were kind of like, yeah, I mean, it sounds interesting. It's like brilliant. And so my first exposure to an iron pour with a cupola was a grainy VHS videotape with the Prodigy's fire starter blasting out over it, and it was like somebody had filmed like an iron pour, I think in Wales a couple of years before, and it just looked mad. Like didn't quite work out what was going on, and then all of a sudden this like stream of like modern metal comes flying out of somewhere that somebody catches, and then they're all like running off, like, and then something's flaming
Yeah.
and stuff. And we're like, yeah, that looks interesting. Yeah, let's say what do we do? And he was like, well, we need to build a thing called a cupola, and then of course the famous question is, well, what's a cupola? And then we kind of got into it, and yeah, so we ended up building this cupola based off of a design by, I think it was one of George Beasley's designs,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it was called Y Dragoch, which is Welsh for the Red Dragon. Is he was because we were in Wales, and it
Yeah.
seemed fitting, but again, like it was one of those things, and there was another artist, a sculptor called Matthew Tomlin, who again is a really interesting guy, and he had gained a travel scholarship through the Winston Churchill Foundation over here to
Okay.
fly to America back in the '90s to research iron casting. So
Uh-huh.
I think I'm right in saying that he went out and saw like Wayne and Ken Payne and
Mm-hmm.
Carl Billingsley and Skip Van Houten, and went around and saw all of their setups.
Wow.
And he wrote a compendium on, it's called I think it's called like Toward Better Iron or Toward Better Metal or something. I got a copy of it still somewhere. I mean, I kind of, it was my sort of Bible I used like when I was first melting metal and stuff, because
Yeah.
he'd come over to America, glean the information, and brought it back to the UK. And so he was working in conjunction with us. And anyway, they because there was an engineering department attached to the college,
Uh-huh.
they'd gone off and gotten like the pipe rolled, but they got like half-inch like steel pipe rolled for like the jacket of the furnace and
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, this thing's like bomb proof. Like
That's heavy.
enormous scale, and
She heavy.
it's not like massive. I think it had like maybe I want to say like a 2 foot ID, something like that. So
Okay. Yeah.
it would tap out like a good amount of metal, and the wind belt was fairly low to the bed, so you got like good hot
Yeah.
iron out of the thing. And we had like an old wood chip dust extractor thing like hooked up to the back that was that we called Nelly, and the burning torch was called Rambo. I seem to remember.
Okay, so you're not
But
only so you're because it's common for us to name the furnaces, but you guys were also naming the blower and the burn-in torch.
I think everybody named everything. Yeah, I
That's
think that's something
fantastic.
I remember.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we built this thing, and bearing in mind, like he showed us the video before Christmas. Everybody kind of went away for the break, and then we came back, and it was like, right, if we're going to do this, it's happening in 12 weeks.
Oh,
So we need to build the furnace, test the furnace, and also you guys need to have a bit of practice, like pouring,
yeah.
before we go to this international conference where there's going to be about 200 participants, most of whom are American,
Hmm.
and we're doing all this stuff. And it's like, okay, right, yeah, okay, and but yeah, like not like breaking out in a cold sweat or anything, but it's like, okay, yeah, no, it sounds fine, like absolutely fine,
No
and,
problem. Yeah.
absolutely not. And so yeah, so we built the thing in our spare time. Like we got it all together with Griff and with Bob and with
Yeah.
Robert and Matthew coming in. And I think this was the thing, was like I was just really, and going back to that, like being open to the universe, or like
Yeah.
to come along. Like I think I was just really, really fortunate to be at that college at that time
Yeah.
to have that experience. Because it definitely, well, we hadn't gotten that far yet, but we ran the furnace at the
Yeah.
college, and yeah, it worked. Like we lit the coke, put the metal in, metal came out. It was like, what do we put it in? And I think someone made a
Oh,
mold.
yeah. You're not the only ones to get to that point where
Yeah,
you're like,
we
oh,
poured a bucket. Yeah,
yeah,
and then I think we just made some ingots and stuff.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, yeah, it looked like it worked, so they were happy with it. But then they said, so what we're going to do the week after next is it was getting up to Easter and it was kind of getting close to this conference. Is that there's an ironworks just outside of Bridgend,
hmm
which is in South Wales, called Tondi, and it's one of the best preserved Victorian examples of an ironworks, the Victorian ironworks that still exist
okay,
at the time. And I think somebody's bought it. I don't think they've like redeveloped it or anything, but basically they have the coke beehive ovens at the top because what they were doing, because it was on a much smaller scale back in
yeah,
Wales, but
okay,
they'd dig out the coal and then they bring the coal in by train and then they coke the coal on site
okay,
and then they take the coke and stick it in a blast furnace and then all the iron ore was coming in as well because how the country is like organized over here, especially in Wales, is all the mineral deposits are basically within like 30 miles of each other,
yeah,
so you can just train everything in.
yeah,
And they had two, I mean, they were massive, but they had like these two blast furnaces that were running in tandem there. And it ran, oh God, I've got to try and remember that. Sorry. It ran from, I think it was like 1830 to like 1890 or something. And what killed it was the fact that everything worked off of gravity, which was fine. But then they scrapped these two smaller blast furnaces and they built a bigger blast furnace. But because the bigger blast furnace was taller than where the coal and where the coke was coming in, they had to then lift, like they installed a lift to like carry everything up,
yeah,
and it just couldn't produce the material as cheaply as other bigger concerns that were in Port Talbot or Newport or wherever else.
okay,
And so it folded. And so basically the whole site shut down in 1890 and then it went through some various iterations. But cut to 2005,
yeah,
a crack team of Welsh students there working with one Coral Lambert,
hmm
who was a visiting artist there, and another artist called Dilys Jackson, who was working with her. And yeah, they had I think it was one of Charles Hook's old furnaces that he built, and it was on like a tripod, but it was like a slightly smaller version of what we had fired up in college. And
yeah,
so we were like, okay, well, seems interesting. And yeah, and then we ran it and we had like 5 or 6 taps off of it. But the thing that really stuck with me and I think informed my practice at that moment was the fact that I was on the live end on the ladle of the first tap. So I was the first person to pour, like physically pour iron there. I mean, I know we all did it, but like to actually pour iron into a mold there
yeah,
in like 100 or so years. And like that kind of like uh, spanning of time or like whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It just felt like there was like a presence, or I don't want to talk about like an aura or anything, but yeah, it just felt like quite a humbling moment. And
yeah.
then
It
two
moved
weeks after,
you. It moved
yeah, it
you.
did. And like 2 weeks after that, we went up to Ironbridge, and yeah, it was great. Like George Beasley built one of his wicker
hmm
furnaces and
Wonderful.
cut this mad, like massive X in the ground, which we
Yeah,
then went off and buried somewhere.
yeah,
There were loads of interesting panels on stuff, but it was all run out of the old Arga Rayburn factory that was there, which shut down back in 2017. It's where they used to cast all the old cast iron stoves that like you find in like old English farmhouses. I mean, we
right.
got one downstairs.
Wow.
It's great. It's
Yeah,
great to make toast on. You can cook a turkey in it because it's always on. Like it
yeah,
doesn't switch off. You just have it lit and you just like put stuff in, take stuff out, and it's kind of there's a bit of an alchemy to it. But that foundry had been running there for 300 years
wow.
continually, and was founded by I think it was founded by Abraham Darby or Charles Darby or someone, and they finally yeah shut it down in 2017, which fair enough everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, but when we were there back in '06, that was where we had the production pour, and there were 4 furnaces at this production pour. So there was us on one end, and then at the other end there was a continual teapot, like tall
Yep. Okay.
cupola thing, and I forget who bought that. And then in the middle there was this one called the Exquisite Cupola, which was much smaller, and that was quite a nice project. A group of artists, everyone had been given like a brief, and so everybody like made a leg
Oh, yeah.
and made like, a piece, and then they assembled the thing there, and it had like a dragon that wrapped around it and
Uh-huh.
stuff. But it was only, I think it was only like maybe a foot ID, maybe a bit
Okay.
bigger than a
Yeah.
student could. And then Butch Jack was there with a trash can and a hairdryer and a bucket to do the scratch tiles. And I think, I don't know, I was told there was like an issue with Coke, but like not really having any knowledge of
Hmm.
any of this. We're just like, okay,
Yeah.
and so they kind of struggled with like how they were running and the teapot. I think the teapot. I don't want to say it choked, but I think they had some issues.
Yeah.
But basically, what ended up happening was the two smaller furnaces poured all the small stuff that they could,
Yeah.
but then there was a bunch of big stuff left, and so what was supposed to be like a 2 hour demonstration ended up turning into this like 6 hour
Yeah.
like full on iron pour, which
Yeah. Like a
yeah, we did some of
marathon.
it. And yeah, we dropped the bottom and like we all went out to the pub. It was fantastic,
As you
and
should. Yeah.
but the other thing is like because our furnace kept going, and we cast all the, oh, this is how I remember it, but because our
Yeah.
furnace kept going, we cast everybody's work. All of a sudden, we had all these like business cards and invitations and stuff,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was like, oh, fantastic, that sounds brilliant. And so the following spring, I then went back out to the last Southern conference that was at Sloss, and so that was my first trip to Sloss with a friend, and we were representing the Welsh.
Yeah.
So we had like a Welsh flag on our tent when you used to be able to camp
Oh, you
around
still
the back
can.
of
You
the
can.
casting
So
shed.
this would have been in 2000
This
and
was in 2007.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and yeah, it was great. Like we met like I remember meeting like Remy and Joe
Yeah.
McCreary, Durant Thompson, and actually we stayed. Doug Barton picked us up from the airport and drove us to Skip Van Houten's place. Now we've never been like the only time I've been to America before, I went to Florida on like a family vacation
Yeah.
to Disneyland and NASA back in the day,
Yeah.
which was great. But this was like my first time back in the States, and my friend who was with me, she was basically like, well, if we get murdered in the woods, like, I mean, I'll just push you in the way first and run off. And I was like, oh, fair enough. I'll give you like a
Yeah.
good, 10-second head start
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, we went out to Skip's place,
Wow.
I haven't been there, but yeah, it was great. Like they had like his house and his family were like super generous and
Yeah.
everything, and we sort of got up, and he had like this sort of really serious looking like furnace and just a gantry and like kind of an open barn. And I guess the weather is a little different in the south, so you can. Or that was my impression. The few trips I've been down there and like worked down there, because like back in England, it's kind of like in Seattle where
Mm.
you can just like a lot, so you have to be a lot more kind of inside. But yeah, he had like all these like school buses around and like all these kind of like monumental kind of like sculptures and things like growing up through and stuff. And then anyway, we went to Sloss and again Coral was there and Christian Benefield and they had this crazy tractor furnace. So it was like this cupola on the back of a tractor that had
I
a plowshare. They were like plowing this thing and like pouring this iron into the ground and like planting it and stuff. And it just looked like
was that
it kind
also
of
was that Skip
I think that was Skip and
and like Durant
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
um yeah.
I'm not sure who else, but I remember seeing it and thinking that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I might pinch that at some point. But yeah, that was a great trip. And then, but then off the back of that, I met some other people. And then that summer, I was back at Franconia Sculptor Park
Hmm.
for their iron pour.
Hmm.
And then that winter, I went over because I'd met George up in Scotland at SSW,
Yeah.
George Beasley, a few years before. But yeah, it all kind of culminated in the fact that I visited Alfred as a visiting artist with Coral because she just started working in the National Casting Centre there.
Yeah.
And I remember I hopped a train from Rochester, New York, to into New York, and then I took the Amtrak from New York down to Georgia,
Yeah. Wow.
down to Atlanta, and it was like a full day on the train, like a full night and a day on the train. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was amazing, just like winding down through the country and stuff. And then yeah, I was the visiting artist for their Christmas pour in '07.
Okay.
But yeah, applied to Alfred off the back of that, got
Mm-hmm.
accepted onto the master's program there,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was really interesting because they had this national casting center in it, so they had like an induction furnace.
Mm-hmm.
While I was there, Coral built this big cupola
Mm-hmm.
called Tara that we used to run for their like open invitational, and Ken Payne, who's up in Buffalo because he's just up the road.
Yeah.
I went up to the turkey pour up there a few times,
Mm-hmm.
and again like well they had a bigger yard, but I was there like I think the last year they had like a small yard, and it was just like it was like a beautiful, almost like choreographed like ballet of like I don't want to say chaos, but they have like this massive furnace running, and what they were doing was they would like back a pickup up and like roll off two like big because it was all big molds, but they'd roll off like two big molds onto the yard,
Mm-hmm.
fill the molds, wait like 10 minutes, and then pallet truck them back onto the truck and drive
Okay.
the truck in, and bring the next truck in and swap it out like that. Or that's how I remember it
Yeah.
anyway. But yeah, it was great being afforded that opportunity, and after that experience, because it was a 2 year program at Alfred,
Okay.
but they like cram a 4 year program into a 2 year program.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty intense in like the best possible way, and I stayed on there after a year to teach and stuff.
Yeah.
Which was again was great, and that's when I met
Chris.
Kristen and everything.
Yeah.
And then yeah, I kind of so after all of that, you take a breath. I wound up back in England,
Yeah.
and I was like, right now, so what's next? You know,
Yeah.
and yeah. So that was kind of like those sort of formative years,
What a
and
whirlwind.
yeah, it really was. And yeah, I guess sorry to keep the pace up, but like
No, no,
that
I
that,
want to say
that
thank you because
yeah,
you've just told me you've filled in so many, you don't even know. You don't even know.
okay, cool.
You've filled in so many little blanks that I've had and told me, yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. That was
Yes.
fantastic. So just keep it up. Just keep on going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess to go back to Wales,
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, we did a conference there, and then like I say, I went off on my own path and like
Hmm.
ended up in the States for a few years.
Hmm.
But I think it really re-galvanized the program, and like Griff had like a really good energy about him
Yeah.
because we so during all the excitement, we went to Iron Tribe.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Yes. Tell
yeah,
me about, don't leave that
yeah.
out.
So we went to Iron Tribe as the Welsh back in 2000, and I think it was 2006,
Okay.
because David, I think I've got this right. David came to the conference in Ironbridge,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Oh
You,
yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, you know how he is. He's like,
yeah. Come
yeah,
on
sure,
down. Yeah.
come on down. Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, it's great. We'll look after
Yeah.
you. I know a guy. It's like okay, fine. And
And
so
he is the guy. Yeah.
yeah. And so yeah, I think that was it. I can't. But
So
anyway,
you're all in New Mexico.
yeah, basically, yeah. No, this was it. Sorry, this was the first trip back, and then off the back of that, I went to Sloss. But
Okay. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
we flew into Denver, and I mean this could lead into a story later on, but we flew into Denver because David was basically like, look, you can get into Denver. It's a great town.
Yeah.
We've got a brilliant foundry, like leather supply shop, because there's the stuff we were wearing like before. Oh no, it was fine, but it was all like it just didn't have the panache and the style that America
Oh,
does. You
okay.
know, like because like over here, and I think this is the difference, is like you can get stuff, like you can order stuff, you can get things,
Okay.
but in America you can get the same stuff, but you can get like 20 of the same thing, and they're all different colors, and they have
Mm.
like Bluetooth or like they sparkle or whatever,
Yeah.
and it's just like different economy of scale or whatever, and and
Yeah.
and so like if you want good leathers, this is the shop to go to get
Okay.
that, and then you can drive down. It's like a
5 hour.
6 hour
Yeah.
drive,
Five,
yeah, a
6.
6 hour drive. Stop at Pueblo, get a whatever, and come on through. And so we're like, yeah, that sounds great. So we fly into Denver, and And anyway, I split the driving with Andy because he was like, I need a designated driver, or not a
Yeah.
designated driver, but driving with someone. And I
Yeah,
was
like
like,
a
well,
pilot,
I'll do it.
co-pilot. Yeah.
Yeah, so we go out to the parking lot and and there's a tumbleweed rolling past and we're just both like, wow, like I've never seen a tumbleweed before. That's amazing, you know.
I don't know if
Yeah,
I've ever seen a tumbleweed before.
it was great. It was only
Yeah.
about that big, like, you know. But yeah, we hopped in the car and yeah, Andy was great. Like we drove on down and stopped at a few places on the way and stuff. And yeah, he had like a full-on sing along in the van and stuff, like you do, like a proper road trip. There was
Yeah.
about I think that went over for it, and we got to Las Vegas and found David. And I think I'm right in saying when we came in, they had like this plane, like this flaming plane, because it was like the performance evening, and there was like a thing happening, and then another thing happening and stuff.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
It is the furnaces, and he invited us all. Oh, sorry, but my point back in Denver was that so the day we were going to go and get the leathers, because Rianne Crane,
Right?
another great person to talk to,
Uh-huh.
she she basically we got woken up at like 6 a.m. and they were like, there's a snowstorm blowing in because I guess of the time of year or whatever,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
absolutely.
they're going to shut the highway. And so
You
if they shut
gotta
the highway,
go. Yeah.
they're going to miss the whole thing. So there's no time. So we had to like book it at a Dodge or whatever. And so we all pile into this minivan, and Andy's just driving. And for like the first hour, he's just like, we're no eight knuckles on the wheel
Yeah.
because it's basically like a whiteout. And we drove all the way down, and we basically got to Pueblo, and then everybody took a breath.
Yeah.
And then we came around the corner, and then we were into like the Badlands, and you see like these thunderstorms and like the colors and like everything. It was absolutely amazing. Um, and anyway, then we drove there, and then on the way back,
Hmm.
we drove back into Pueblo. And as we were turning the corner, kind of because I know you can kind of see the Rockies from a distance, but
Yeah.
as we were coming back, and we were meant to see like these beautiful mountain vistas and stuff. Of course, it got dark because it was nighttime. So
Right.
for a number of years, I was like, I've driven past the Rockies twice, and I've never seen them. Which is a sad situation. But
Hmm.
but anyway, yeah, we were down at Iron Tribe, and yeah, it was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal. Like everybody was really generous. Again, we met a bunch of people there, and I think that's how we then ended up going on to Sloss. So yeah, I didn't mean
Yeah.
to
And
put
all
that on, but
this. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And like they had the Plaza Hotel, and like
Yeah.
everybody was in the plaza and all this sort of stuff. And then they had the hot springs
Yeah.
and stuff. So yeah, yeah, it was good. It was really something. So
I'm
and
glad
yeah,
you remembered that. I'm glad you didn't leave that.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's it because I also feel like as well, like and like this is the thing, like what we've been doing back here is like and I mean we can get more into this in a minute,
Yeah.
but like the problem in the UK is like you can't get coke anymore to run the furnaces. Like, you haven't
Yeah.
really been able to for a couple of years, and so we've kind of like moved around and like found what works for us and stuff.
Yeah.
And I got like a list of pros and cons and whatever
Yeah.
about running
Well, let's get
physical
to,
furnaces
I
running
want to
Crucible.
get to that, but well, let's get back to where your story is.
Oh yeah,
So
yes, yes,
you
yes.
land back in the UK and you're like,
Hmm.
well, what's next?
Oh yeah, so basically so I was at Alfred for 3 years,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was an amazing experience. We went down to Sloss two more
Hmm.
times. Well, I
Yeah.
was there in '09. We went down and ran a student. We participated in the student cupola contest,
Hmm.
which was great. And this kind of leans into because it's like a big ceramic engineering department at Alfred as well,
Yeah.
and like a really big fine arts department as well. And there were some undergrads who wanted to work with me on a project to make a cokeless cupola. And the idea was that we were going to take this cokeless cupola down to Sloss and run it for the student cupola contest and win the student cupola contest with the cokeless cupola.
Let's do
And
it. Yeah.
yeah, well, that's it. Well, we started putting it together, and like we troubleshot through like a lot of stuff, and we got it to a point where um yeah, the thing would melt like stainless steel. But the problem was that um I think it was like the refractory technology and stuff at the time
Yeah.
just meant that it wasn't viable, and we just couldn't quite get it to work properly. And
Hmm.
with all the love in the world, like you can take on one of these projects, but also everybody's there. We've still all got to get like degrees and graduate and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, so we knocked off the burners and took it down as like a regular cupola, and I
Yeah.
think we did pretty cool with it. Yeah, so that was fine. It didn't like freeze or anything. So
Good. Yeah.
It's good, yeah. And then in 11, I went down and did like the big mold workshop and stuff, and that was really good. Like working with the crew down there and actually making like quite a hefty piece, which which was it was fun to get on the big ladle and
Mhm.
be able to pull
Oh
that off
yeah.
and stuff. But yeah, I kind of got back from all of that, and then it was just kind of figuring out like what to do
Yeah.
next. And yeah, I don't know. I know like other people I've talked to about like grad school and stuff kind of get like burnt, well, I'd say burnt out, but also like it's kind of nice to just pause and take a breath for a minute.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I did sort of various jobs within the arts, but I worked for the Tate for a while, doing art storage and handling and cataloging and condition reporting and all that kind of behind the scenes stuff, like more
Hmm.
archival stuff, which I found really interesting actually, because again over in Salisbury Way, which again isn't that far, but there's an old naval base, and basically the base was converted back in the 90s. It all got sold off and privatized, but they had all these underground vaults, like these massive vaults. They're about it's like something out of a James Bond film. You open up like these blast doors and go down this like 300-yard long concrete tunnel with like railroad tracks on,
Yeah.
and then you get into this like chamber, and these vaulted halls are like I don't know, they're like 800 to 1,200 foot long. They're like 80 foot wide. The ceilings are like 60 foot tall, and they're just stacked with racking. And like the British Museum, the Tate, the V&A, they all have work and their collections and everything there. They're all climate controlled and
Hmm.
everything. And yeah, in terms of a job, like it was a pleasant job,
Yeah.
and I was still like going to conferences and doing things. So there was a couple of years where like I was heading back to the States, and you like you work the job, and then because they'd have, it sounds daft, but they'd always have like the busy shift was always in the spring, because either the shows would be coming up, or especially with stuff that was being condition checked, if they were restoring stuff, it tended to be they'd want to get things into the shows for the fall, so like after the August holiday or whatever. And so you kind of be pretty busy from February through to like June, and then you could kind of take a holiday around July or August, which worked out really well because like Salem Artworks and
Yeah.
various other places, they have their like summer intern
Hmm.
programs and stuff.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I applied to various places like that and got in. And actually, when I was at SAW, because I remember one of your questions asked about describe all the furnaces you've built over the years.
Yeah.
I've made a few, but I think one of the more fun ones was the gingerbread furnace we baked at Salem Artworks.
What? Okay. Tell me. Yeah.
So it was basically like a chicken mesh thing with lined with refractory, but we baked the shell out of gingerbread.
Okay.
So it's like a tabletop mini cupola
Yeah.
kind of thing. And yeah, put gumdrop tweers on it,
Of
and
course.
had like a little pastry mold we had to that we baked as well
Uh,
to pour into. And yeah, Coral was there, so I think she can confirm this. But yeah, we loaded the thing up and got it running, and yeah, it went pretty well for about 10 minutes, and then it really started smoking, and
oh.
then you could see like the flames like coming through the cage. But we managed to get like a tap off it and like cast like a lump of metal like that.
That's
So
great. Yeah.
yeah, something fun, just as like a laugh. It was to close out like the iron pour that
Yeah.
year or whatever. And then while I was there, they were talking about so in the interim, I was studying my master's when the Sixth International happened at Kidwelly,
Hmm.
which we came back for
Hmm.
in Wales, and
Yeah.
that was a really fantastic show. They had like Kidwelly Castle. They had like this big outdoor sculpture exhibition, like through like this medieval castle ruins. So
Wow.
people had like sculptures up in the turrets and in the courtyard and
Hmm.
all different places.
Yeah.
And yeah, they had uh, like a performance pour, and Tamsi Ringler,
Yeah.
who's another great person.
Yeah.
She had this piece where she had this car that was a mold, and they poured like a fish kind of structure inside the car. So they basically cut like a hole in the top of this car and made the mold out of sand inside the car.
Okay. Yeah.
And they got up on the gantry and like poured this thing into this car and stuff, and then cleaned it out. So you were left with the car with the piece inside the car.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm trying to remember what else at that conference. Yeah, there were a lot of very interesting panels at that conference as well. And I think it was around about that time that there was more of a conversation happening about like sustainability and the fact that the cost of the fuel was starting to creep up around that time, um, and things were sort of starting to head into like a different direction over here. But after that, when I was back in America, they were talking about where the next conference was going to be, and so Ken Payne and Carl Billingsley put forward Latvia as a destination, and I managed to get involved with that. I was involved with the steering committee and stuff,
Yeah.
and to do with the like more of like a consultation kind of thing of
Hmm.
like practically working out with the performance pause because they wanted to have this like night of performance, and so again I went over 2 years consecutively. So the first year was in 2013, and that was with the steering committee. So there were various bits and pieces with that, and we saw all the sites. Like I mean, Riga's like a phenomenal city if you get the chance
Mm.
to get out of Eastern Europe and stuff. I mean, I really enjoyed it out there. But we were there for the summer solstice, and
Oh, yeah.
there's also
Yeah.
Stonehenge up the way. So like you have the winter solstice and the summer solstice
Yeah.
up there. I mean, I've been to both over the years, and
Hmm.
we actually have a family tradition now because the winter solstice is on the 21st. So we go there with the girls because
Yeah.
my partner and I, we've got Flora, who's 4.5, and Verity, who's just turned 2. But yeah, we everybody wraps up at like 4 in the morning and drives to Stonehenge in the pitch black and get out of the cars, and you get like a bacon sandwich and a cup of tea, and then you walk about a mile up the road to the site, and you just see the sun coming up over the monument and stuff. And yeah, it's really phenomenal, and
That's
it's a
great.
nice way to like kick off the Christmas season or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, Midsummer in Latvia is insane
Mm.
because it's all kind of quite a pagan country, although there are pagan traditions that are kind of found their way through. So there's all these like fertility rites and all this other stuff, and like the men wear like these oak leaf crowns,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
the women like wear flowers, and they had this evening of performance in 2013, and so the idea for the 20 in 2014 when the conference was that there would be uh, uh, all the performance pause would happen on Midsummer Eve
Wow.
and tie with that whole thing.
Wow.
And it was just but it was trying to work out logistically how that would happen. And so
Yeah.
I put my hand up and said, I saw a tractor furnace at Sloss about 7 years ago, and it seemed to work quite well. So we could just build a tractor and stick a furnace on the back and drive it around a 30-acre site, and I'm sure that'll work fine.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, that's what we did. But it was kind of crazy because like the weather over there again, it's kind of like I want to say like I don't keep picking on Seattle, but
It's fine. We all it's something that many of
yeah,
the listeners would be able to relate to. Yeah,
yeah. Because
they'll
it's in
know.
England, and people think you're joking about the weather, but you're not. Like you can have
Mm.
like 4 seasons in one day or whatever.
Hmm.
And when I went out in 2013, they had this massive bonfire. It was about 30 foot tall. Like they just
Yeah.
like 4 trees up against themselves, and like put like these pollards around them and everything, and lit the whole thing off. And it burnt through the evening, and then as it burnt down, it was fine. But there was one point in the evening where it was absolute torrential rain, and it was really cold with it as well because it was quite exposed.
Hmm.
But if you stood downwind from the fire, it was like being in a hot shower. And then but the rain only lasted for like 10, 15 minutes. And if you stayed right next to the fire, you were dry within like half an hour. So it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
And that was fine. And I remember on the night of the performance, because to be fair to them, like the year that I went out and saw the sculpture park, it was Ped Valley, I think was the name of it, and yeah, it was really impressive, like what they were doing out there with everything.
Hmm.
But the facilities were, you know, kind of basic, but
Yeah.
the same way we got taught in Wales, like if you can use these basic tools to make whatever you need to make, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then when I went back in 2014, you could see how they managed to get like 3 phase in and put down like a concrete pad,
Okay.
and yeah,
Yeah.
I think the investment from the conference really helped the museum, which was really nice to
Yeah.
think that was kind of happening. But yeah, we managed to build this cupola on the back of this tractor and on a trailer, and it kind of worked well enough. It made it about halfway around the performance site, and then it kind of choked because I think Yeah, I'm not quite sure why. I think there was like a big distance between one performance and then to come back, and it was coming
Yeah.
back across the field. It started to run into a few problems, but I just remember this image of me and this other guy from Wales, and Christian Benefield was there as well. And we are just like, if we can just keep the tap hole open, and the metal will still run through it, so it'll be absolutely fine. And so we are just like driving this like poker up into this thing, as this tractor's like slowly chugging over this like soil, and it's raining. And then I think at one point we just grabbed it to like pull it out, and like it kind of pulled us
Uh,
over. And then it was because it wasn't going fast. It was
yeah.
like it was barely going walking speed, but like, and then we're kind of on the ground, and then it's like we can't get the thing out. And then we're like, oh, we're being dragged across the field. Hang on, let's just go and pop up again, and we'll have another go. Because we didn't have an oxygen lance. That was the other
Oh,
thing.
yeah. Yeah.
Because I bought one with me just in case, but I didn't realize that like in the UK the tip like the
Yeah.
connectors are backwards
The
in
thread.
Latvia.
Yeah. Oh,
And so,
okay.
yeah. So like over here you have like a female
Hmm.
adapter on the bottle that you screw into,
Yeah.
whereas over there you had a male adapter on the bottle that you screw onto.
Oh,
And yeah, we just couldn't find
yeah.
regulator, but we were like, oh, it'll be fine. And it kind of was for a while,
Yeah.
But yeah, George did like another big, fantastic, wicker
Yeah.
furnace piece, and yeah, there was some really great
And
performances.
Coral had
So the Coral had a
the
volcano, yeah, which was
volcano. Yeah.
absolutely insane. Like it was phenomenal. Like the whole thing was like,
Yeah.
and yeah, they had like a lot of luck with that. Like it was like running like rivers of lava, and I think she had some fireworks as well. And yeah, they got it set off as well just for good measure. So that was good. But yeah, again, the weather that year was like, yeah, it was just like raining quite a bit, and I mean, I guess maybe that's the thing over there. I'm not sure, but yeah, it was good, and then after that, like I say, kind of working back here and
Mm.
yeah, having shows and stuff and working with other artists. But I met some people and colleagues there, like through the Royal College and different things back here, and there was kind of an interest back in the UK at the time of like I wouldn't say like forming like an iron collective, but I think because I was thinking about this and I forget who you were talking to before, but I think there's a difference between like the European model of academia and the American model of academia in
Mm.
terms of making artwork and stuff. And over here, things are like I think a lot of people tend to have a much more sort of broader art practice,
Hmm.
and sort of there tends to be more, and there isn't this necessarily this sort of experimentation and play and having fun and just like making things not for the sake of making things, but sort of working your way through making stuff to produce something. Back here, a lot of people tend to be more sort of formal and
Mm.
sketch things out and work through things that way. And then once
Yeah.
they have like something they're like happy with, that's the thing that gets made. And
Okay.
so it's slightly more, I wouldn't say stilted, but it's just a different way of working.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, because there isn't really like a big iron movement within the UK.
Mm.
Like there's been like bits and pieces, and there are people like doing stuff,
Oh,
but
yeah.
there isn't like a community of people over here you can like lean on in the same way that there is in America.
Yeah.
And anyway, but that was fine. So while that was all going on, and I was sort of working with different iterations of like because at that point I was like sculpting and had my studio practice going and making pieces to exhibit and all
Mhm.
that sort of business. And then I was sort of doing sort of smaller commissions on the side for other people.
Yeah.
And so I was exhibiting, and I had say a studio on the farm. But again, this goes back to back to say childhood, but like back to when I was in Bournemouth and stuff. Like my dad was always very generous to be like, yeah, if you want to hop on a welder or work in a corner here or whatever. And then of course, you start to make things, and then you got
Yeah.
to put things places, and you're tripping over other people and stuff. And so yeah, for anyone who's like been out and seen it, like I have like a studio, but it's like an agricultural tin barn shed with a lean-to, which actually is great. We were like that's what we're running out of at the moment
Mhm.
with our business.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a space that works, but also like yeah, we're packed to the gills, and we could kind of do to, you know, I think if we formalize everything and stuff, then we're going to have to get like a new space or whatever. But for the
Mhm.
moment, it's like kind of fantastic. But yeah, I was working out of there and then taking on like sort of commission work on the side from other people, and so yeah, it was kind of like a loose kind of model and stuff, and then yeah, I got talking to like a few people who'd been to like Latvia and stuff, and there was kind of like a feeling of like, well, why don't we try and do an iron pour at yours? And because I had a cupola, I
Mm.
built a cupola at college. It's called NIGE, and that stands for Near Enough is Good Enough, which was like quite critical in the construction of NIGE. And I built it up in Scotland with George
Okay.
back in the day. And yeah, I made it like 18 years ago. We haven't run it for the last couple of years. Like the last time it really got ran was in 2018,
Uh-huh.
and we set up this annual iron pour, and we ran it for 3 or 4 years. But then it was like a collection of things. But um, uh, COVID happened, and
Yeah.
yeah, my partner, we met through it, but also we were starting a family and stuff. And
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment, like we're kind of in the thick of it with kids and stuff, and it's
Hmm.
absolutely amazing. But yeah, we do not have the energy to like organize an iron pour.
Yeah. And that's
And
okay.
also, yeah. But I think that's the thing over here is like in the States, I know there would be like, like 10 or 20 people I could like call on who like
Yeah.
know what they're doing and like you can just let them at it. And
Yeah.
there are people over here who like, know that as well. But yeah, it's kind of like whoever can turn up. And sorry, this is what I was alluding to about people's like broader practice. So yeah, we've had like a bunch of people down over the years, and everyone's like made iron work or
Hmm.
pieces in iron or whatever, and pieces have gone off to shows and they've been well received and stuff. But but it's kind of like once an artist or a sculptor over here is like made a piece for a specific purpose, once it's done with, that might not necessarily they might not want to work with that material again in their like broader practice. And
Hmm.
I know like and I think again like to go back to getting an Iron Bridge or even like being at Tondi and stuff like that kind of like whole thing about all the prep of the iron pour and the pace of the iron pour and like coming together as a community with people and kind of making like lifelong friends and stuff
Yeah.
and people you can like lean on and stuff is really fantastic if that's what you're into. But if
Yes.
it's not, then it's kind of like it's whatever. Um but yeah, I think so I think for like a number of reasons, like it was kind of gathering a pace, but also it's not that it's stalled, but like yeah, we're in a position now where uh, on the well, this is one for like what's hot on the horizon, but on the 6th of July, we're having a second annual open house.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
because we're running the waste oil furnace
Yeah.
now. Um, you don't need 20 people
Hmm.
because you can't. It's just on a different scale, but
Yeah.
it's also a different pace and stuff. But what we did last year, which worked quite well, was like we invited people down. There's a couple of other like local artists and a founder who came down, and we made some blends of metal, and we were looking more at the metallurgy of it and
Yeah.
stuff. And we still cast about 300 pounds of metal
Oh,
um,
yeah.
the course of the day.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wait,
but
we're gonna stop because
okay.
we haven't gotten through the part where you started and making the waste oil furnaces. Like when did that come in?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, like let's
Okay, I can.
close that
So
loop.
that. Okay, so so to jump back to that, so basically, when I graduated from Wales
Hmm.
back in 2007,
Hmm.
I had a cupola, which was great
Yeah.
because, yeah, I mean, we poured into me and an old friend, dear friend called Sam Eade. And we poured into all sorts of stuff, and he came to Iron Tribe and
Yeah. Yeah.
to the college. He was in the year below. But but yeah, we like poured into ice because somebody poured into ice,
Hmm.
and yeah, we just got like an old chest freezer and made two blocks and slapped them together and put some iron in it, and that was fun. We poured it into wood, we poured it into cupboards,
Yeah.
we poured into all sorts, and just see what would happen. But we couldn't really offer any other metals because I only had a cupola, I didn't have
Yeah.
a furnace.
Yeah.
And so I started looking into like gas furnaces and
Hmm.
like setups and stuff, and
Yeah.
everything was either like prohibitively expensive or or just kind of dicey. And like with propane, like yeah, you kind of hear stories from people in the community, or not in the community, but like
No, I've heard
you
some.
hear stories,
It's
and it's
terrifying.
just like
Yeah.
yeah, that's too much. It's a bit too rich for me, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna just park that there. Um, and so I was kind of scratching my head because I was like, well, well, yeah, like I should probably do some research.
Hmm.
And so the book that I started out on was called The Artful Bodger's Waste Oil Furnace, which is this guy who's an old engineer. He's called Colin Peck, and it worked quite well. He had this so basically he had a crucible. He had like a crucible furnace,
Hmm.
and he took off the basically what we did in Arizona, but he took off the burners that were on there, and then he made this burner himself. But it was like a straight 2-inch piece of stainless pipe,
Okay.
and it had like this heat shield behind it and like a venturi on it. But
Okay.
then he cut like a hole into the other side of the furnace and angled it so that as the flame went into the furnace, there
He
was like a second.
angled the blower
Yeah, no, so the burner,
or the burner. Okay.
yeah, the burner went in on one side,
Okay. And the
and like,
whole
and the hole was angled
the
at the burner,
okay, the whole
and
okay.
he cut like a slit through the burner.
Okay.
And the idea was that as you get the thing hot, this like tiny flamethrower basically of exhaust hits the burner, and that acts as the preheat for the oil to then enter the furnace,
Oh.
and then you can have cast iron.
Oh.
Um, and I built one of those burners, but didn't really. It always kind of struggled in a weird way, and I'd heard other people say about this as well. Like it was kind of like a good idea, and I did more research on like YouTube because like back in like '07, I think you can still find like a bunch of them, but it's like people like putting like because it's all fed in through copper pipe, like 1/4-inch copper pipe, the oil.
Okay.
People like burying them in like the lining of things or
Mm.
coiling them just to try and like preheat and pre-warm the stuff up.
The oil.
And yeah, the problem with all of them is that as soon as that pipe gets too hot or the heat's on that pipe too much, it then starts vaporizing the oil in the pipe, which just means that the oil then just doesn't run through,
Mm.
and so then it becomes intermittent, and then you kind of get up to temperature, but you don't. So it wasn't really stable enough. But also, when I built the first oil furnace, I wasn't really interested in melting iron in it because I had a cupola.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
why would you?
Yeah.
And
You're
I
focused
wanted
on
to have
bronze and
aluminium and
other metals.
bronze
Yeah.
and stuff, and it worked great for that. Like it
Okay.
worked really well.
Yeah.
So that was what I kind of. So it was the version of those two furnaces, the cupola and the original waste oil furnace that I used to
Mm.
work in whichever metal I needed to. Because I still did quite a bit of work in bronze because I think for myself, like I really enjoyed working in cast iron, but when I went to Wales originally, it was to learn bronze casting because I didn't
Hmm.
really have knowledge of iron
Yeah.
casting and it wasn't
Yeah.
offered. So within my own practice, it tends to be like a mix of metals depending on the piece, and
Yeah.
actually, most of the time because I'm sort of working more like in sort of geometries and abstract shapes and stuff at the moment, but I'll cast it in one metal and see how it takes a patina, and then I'll cast it in the other one and see how it takes a liquor green tea or whatever, and
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
make my mind up. But and then try and sell both of them, I suppose. But
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, it was through which iron pour was it? Oh yeah, no, sorry, that was it. So we were doing this iron pour in Dorset, and it was the second year we ran it. There was a contingent of students from my old college in Wales
Okay.
who had been in Latvia, and they had built this massive, it's like a tipping cupola they call
Okay.
the Reider. And I've seen this I don't know if it's like a European innovation or whatever, but there's no tap hole on it. And the idea is it's like a big kettle. And so the thing fills up. And then once you get metal in the well, you then turn a big handle and the whole
Yeah.
thing goes over
Yeah.
and it just pours the iron out. And then you haven't got to worry about um, tapping and botting
Hmm.
things,
Hmm.
which I mean, yeah, I kind of see it from one angle, but actually, if your bots are made properly and you have like a proper bot stick and you're not hand botting, which is crazy, but if you use a bot stick and you've done everything properly, I don't know. I was never quite convinced, but they wanted to run it,
Well, because
and I
also,
was,
well, let me just be a devil's advocate because it's like I'm, I may or may not be in your camp, but also there are people that do the continuous, like you talked about the teapot,
yeah,
like there are people
but
that enjoy continuous
yeah, yeah,
flow furnaces too. And I've seen Kevin Shun in from University of West Georgia this
mhm,
past sloss,
mhm.
and it was beautiful. So, but
Okay, well,
would I choose? Would I have preferences? So
yeah. Well, I think
kettle
also,
furnace. We'll go with it. So they wanted
well, I
to
suppose,
run it.
yeah, which is fine, and I guess on the continual points as well, because Ted Oran down in
Yeah,
Scottsdale,
Scottsdale.
I've been to his for a couple of times, and yeah, it's great. Like it just like comes out, and that's brilliant. But again, it's not like tipping or yeah, I don't know. I think yeah, I mean, I think it's great, but
Yeah, if they get
you know,
it, if they can
um,
do it, what's it? If it's good enough is what was
oh, near enough is good enough. Yeah,
right. So
absolutely.
that applies for them. So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. But anyway, so so they brought it over and like we ran it and it was great. Like it ran yeah, to be fair to them, like it ran really well.
yeah,
It wasn't I think they were having an issue with it and I couldn't I mean I don't want to pry too much, but I don't think it was running quite as quickly as they like, but it finished the pour and everything was fine and we had like a bunch of people over and still like had drinks
yeah,
and the grill and stuff. And then it got to the day after the pour when we were all knocking out, and my partner Necole, who I'd met up at the Royal College Summer Show, had come down because we were friends before and everything,
yeah,
and she was the foundry fellow at Chelsea College of Art, which is like quite a thing, and she'd come down with another artist as well. And they bought ceramic shells with them, and like they'd done this extra work to like make these shells and get them ready and bring them down on a train and like get here to this place to do this thing. And they'd done all this work, and they were like, "Where are our shells?" And they're at the back of the workshop, and I was like, "Oh, fuck!"
no. So they didn't get poured.
I was like, "Oh shit!" Like they haven't been poured. Oh great. And I was like,
Oh no.
"Hang on, get me a crucible." So we so everybody's hungover, everybody's
Of
like
course,
knocking everything up,
par for the
and
course.
we set up a crucible furnace in the middle of all of it,
Yeah,
and we just I just went around and like took people's cups off them and like stuffed them in this crucible, put a match up it, and we had a pot of crucible iron within 2 hours, poured their stuff, and they took it back to London, and that was fine. But I think in that moment I was like, there's something here like that I've overlooked, and yeah, I don't know. I was just like, this is appealing because yeah, and that's kind of like getting us up to like where we kind of are now.
okay.
But I think also like having gone to like yeah, loads of iron pours over the year, and especially like in America and stuff. They're great, and like if you go to a good one, it's phenomenal
Yeah,
because like if the iron's good and the people know what they're doing, it's fantastic. But also, I've been to a few where like and again, like no disrespect to anyone because everybody's learning, and I think that's what it is. Is if you take it for what it is, which is like it's this sort of it's an educational experience as much as it is like a communal thing,
yes, and
and
an art
yeah,
making event and
mm,
all of that. Yeah, there's a lot
absolutely. But
wrapped in it.
and I guess the thing that we're hot on down here are like variables, and so there are like a lot of variables that if you're casting like sort of standard straightforward stuff,
Yeah.
then it's fine. But if you're wanting to do like more intricate things and more specific things,
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
there are variables that through nobody's fault can like interfere with stuff. And so
Yeah.
it was like, well, how do we start to eliminate those variables, and how do
Yeah.
we like change
Especially
the
if
model?
there's a
Um,
commission or if
yeah,
there's
exactly.
money. I mean, because
Yeah,
you're right, there is this whole the paying for the materials, whether it's shell or sand, and whatever to make the mold and the time, and
yeah,
but it's like that's all investment. But then if it's a commission,
yeah, that as
like
well.
I've had a couple of commissions that I had to cast twice, and I had to eat that. You eat any little
That's
bit of
brilliant.
profit.
Yeah,
And that's, a learning experience in itself.
yeah,
So, yeah, there's something about,
yeah.
yeah. A,
And so that was like I would say playing on my mind, but I
Mm.
think like that's the thing is like I don't say affected my practice, but I was like, there's this stuff that I really like to do, but there's too many variables with
Yeah.
what's happening here, and also I don't really want to like worry about it, and I don't want to be like that guy at the Iron Bar who's like, move out of the way, I need to pull my mold. Like I'm
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
this is important. I just want to be like, yeah, just go off. I don't want to like worry about it. Like
Yeah.
I want to. I mean, the last iron pour, when I was at ASU, they had the Scottsdale pour
Yeah.
with Ted and Christian flew down and flew out to see the waste oil furnace because he's been working on one himself. And yeah, there was like uh, yeah, we were just like we were the dads because he's the dad as well now, and we were just hanging out by the shell oven, like warming the shells up, and like, yep, you know, 10 minutes. There's a 1 month way. Yeah, kids have fun, and it was just really nice, like not being like in the thick of it as such, but just like having a job and just doing the job and
Yeah.
having a great time and seeing like this whole like performance like play out in front
Yeah.
of you,
Yeah.
which has always appealed to me with it, and I think that's the thing as well. But yeah, I think also like, and that's the thing over the last number of years is like as I've had like clients return or other
Mm.
artists, like, it's usually people who like come out and like worked with us, and then they might then want to get something cast, but they don't want to do the work, or they've had the experience and they're like, we trust you to do this for
Mm-hmm.
us.
Mm-hmm.
So get on with it, and it's like fair enough. And yeah, it was yeah. So it was during COVID that we had a commission, and this is when it really like clicked was the fact that it was like a public commission for a park, and it was like this quite ornate bench
Mm-hmm.
that needed to be made, and we were doing these cast iron segments, and it was this design firm from London, and then it was this company down in the town I was going to that were doing the fabrication. And I was like, it'll be fine, absolutely fine. Like, I can get like one friend out because everybody's like isolating or whatever,
Right.
but you can
Yeah.
work in
Lockdown.
a bubble or whatever.
Yeah.
And we worked out a plan and everything, and we were like, we're only going to be able to, so we changed the cupola to a cupolette to give us a
Okay.
bit more time. And we welded like a 2 foot long length of steel off of the side of the furnace with a swivel on it. And so the idea was you drop the dead end of the ladle into that housing,
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
and that was our third person right there to hold the
Right.
ladle.
Yeah.
Well, I plugged it and then picked it up, and then we went off and poured it, and that was how
Brilliant.
it was supposed to work. Except for the fact that, yeah, we did all the prep, we did everything else, and we just like, I think we just needed like 3 or 4 people to like run the cupola to make it work because we'd start casting because we had about 60 of these things that we had to cast,
Whoa. Yeah.
and each one took like a full ladle,
Yeah.
and yes, it was about 30 pairs altogether, and so we'd start the campaign and we get maybe 2 or 3 or 4 sets in, but then the furnace would like choke
Yeah.
or the ladle would be cold, and there was just way too much to like balance.
Mm-hmm.
So we tried it a couple of times and it just wasn't working, and then
Mm.
not like and so this company getting kind of jumpy because like, we need to be working on this stuff.
It's the
And
pandemic. Everything had
no, I know.
supply
Well, there was
chain.
that.
Like,
Yeah, there was
I,
that which helped.
yeah.
But also it wasn't. It was because also like I feel like people like also think like in terms of like miscasts, it's like there'd be like a section that wasn't quite there, and that was the issue.
Yeah.
Um, they didn't want to like weld it or chase it or dress it or anything, and so we'd have to fling it on a pile and start again. And so
Yeah.
that was just really going anywhere. And so we had this larger crucible furnace, and I had an old crucible. And I was like, well, why don't we try a crucible of iron in the big
Mm.
furnace
Yeah.
and see if that works? And yeah, it took like 3 hours to melt the iron
Okay.
initially. But we
Okay.
pulled the pot and it was fine. But then we put the pot straight back in, and then we did another pot. But because the heat was already in the lining, it cut down on the time. And so
Like how
we
much?
realized
Like estimate,
uh,
not hard.
30%, something like that.
Great.
So we
Okay.
went from 3 hours to 2 hours.
Perfect.
And we spent like a good chunk of the day doing it, but we probably pulled a couple 100 kilos of iron off, and that was enough to get like a third of the commission done.
Yeah.
And then we were able to do the other two chunks over 2 separate days. And I was like, well, actually, that's quite a volume of work we've been able to cast. I mean, in terms of it being scalable, I think that's the issue. But
Yes.
also,
Yeah.
if you have a workshop and you're like, working on your own practice
Yeah.
or anything from like a torso down, like smaller stuff, and you just need access to iron, then
Hmm.
yeah, it really, yeah, it really like showed its merits.
Yeah. What was the weight of the pot estimate each
Oh, it's
one?
so each one it's a 60 kilo pot, so
Okay.
that's about 130 pounds
Nice.
each
Mm.
pot, and we tend to fill it to about 55 kilos, something like that. Which is what we've blended now, and that's what we work with. But yeah, and again, to go back to your point about like the cost of everything, I
Yeah.
think the reason why it's kind of has been unfashionable within the community or whatever is like traditionally, like when you think about the iron pour and the spectacle and everything, but also the fact that like if you could get all your coke for free and if you could get all your lining for free and you're really only paying for the mold material,
Yeah.
then it's kind of expensive because like a new crucible you'll probably get like I don't know maybe ten runs off of if
Okay.
you look the Crucible.
Okay.
It just depends. But like a Crucible is probably like a couple $100.
Hmm.
So that's like $20 a pot or whatever.
Hmm.
But the way we
Okay.
price everything, we just factor the cost into the production of the
Yeah.
metal.
You got to. Yeah.
But then there's the case that like if you're making the metal, because the other great thing about a cupola that I really love is that the chemistry is all there.
Yeah.
Because you can chuck it, well, not any old junk, but you can put the stuff in the top. And by the time it gets to the bottom, it's so carbon rich that like you've got good ground. Like you've really got to go a ways to like I think mess that up.
Yeah.
But with the oil furnace, you can burn the iron and you can make really white iron. So
Okay.
you just have to like inoculate it with a bit of ferrosilicon
Hmm.
or there's other like compounds and stuff you can add in. So but like with a bit of basic metallurgy and like weighing everything out and prepping everything ahead of time, there isn't that much prep to do because you don't need to break anything up.
Okay.
You can melt like big chunks of iron and stuff. Yeah, it's just like a bronze pour or an aluminium pour. You're just like pushing everything to a higher temperature.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it works well for us. It works well. It's just like I say, like kind of the pros of it are kind of the cons of it. If like if you're all about well, not all about, but like yeah, in terms of like, because I think like the great thing about an iron pour is like the networking opportunities as much as
Hmm.
the process or the product.
Hmm.
And so I think like working on this scale or with this method, it would be trying to find the room to accommodate that as well for people who are interested. But I think for anyone who's got like a small shop or even like a large studio who need access to iron in between iron cores or
Yeah.
whatever, then yeah, it's good. But like I say, you just can't get the coke here anymore. And this is
Mm.
the thing. So with our invitational in July, the technician from the Edinburgh Sculpture Workshop is coming down because they just burnt through their last like load of coke
Hmm.
with the cupola, and he managed to get a price to import it from Poland, but it was like a 20-ton minimum order,
Yeah.
and it was something like I think it was like $30,000 or
Yeah.
something to
Yeah.
get it out.
I'm not
But then that
surprised.
coke's going to last them like 20 years, and it's
Yeah.
like where do you put it? So
Yeah.
uh,
There's so
I
many
think
things
that
to juggle with that. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where we are. That's kind of where we are with it anyway. Um, yeah, I mean, I could talk more about it or
Well, so I just like my so back to the very first when you were talking about pouring the shells.
yeah, yeah.
So that furnace that you used hadn't been built to melt iron in it,
Not specifically, and
but it just
that was
worked.
yeah. Well, it took a little while to get up there, but
Okay.
yeah, but because sorry, that's the other thing. So when we were at Alfred working on the cokeless cupola,
Okay.
we got we got these burners down, and the burners worked a treat. The problem was with the cokeless design, and I know Jeremy Entwistle
Yeah.
and John Thorpe, they've really been developing this, and I got invited over to Berlin to a conference, and I bought our ex traveling cupola crucible furnace over with us. We've built a new one since then,
Okay.
which we're playing around with, um, but yeah, they've had a lot more luck because I think the ceramic technology has developed in like the last 15 years or whatever. But yeah, the issue we had was that you basically create like a synthetic stack of coke
Okay.
out of
Okay.
like, ceramic spheres, because you still have to keep the iron in suspension while it melts to run through the furnace.
Okay.
And burners need to have like clear space to be able to freely combust underneath. So you basically make this grill and you
Mhm.
stack everything above the grill and then you run it that way.
Okay.
And yeah, I think they've had some real luck with it. But yeah, we had these burners that worked a treat. It's just that they were melting out the furnace every time. That was the problem. And
Okay.
so, but I took that designer burner and like stuck it on my bronze furnace, and
Perfect.
yeah, it was great. And so I was like, well, it should work. So because it worked on the other one, and it did. I just hadn't gotten around in typical fashion. I just hadn't gotten around
Right.
to
You just needed a good reason.
trying it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that seemed like as good a reason as any.
Of
So
course.
that's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and yeah, and I think like since then, and I think that was the really great thing about like working with Mary at ASU is the
Yeah.
fact that like the furnace we converted and adapted there, I was able to like implement like a bunch of tweaks and changes I'd wanted to do to our ones back here, and
Hmm.
since getting there, we've come back and um, yeah, implemented those on our large furnace, and yeah, it's running a lot more efficiently than it was before, and I think
Good.
for us and for me as well, like it would be really good to like set up like an online forum or you know to keep it all open source for everybody and just to see what other people come up with and how other people like develop things because yeah I'm sure someone will figure it out and it'll you know like it works well for us and what we need to do
Yeah.
here but yeah any improvements I think are good improvements to strive for you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And it's also to your point about cuz I feel like you kind of touched upon this like the networking that a big blast furnace iron pour brings about and the friend making and lifelong friends and stuff.
Yeah.
But then a eh, there's a group of us and I'm one of
Hmm.
them that,
Yeah.
sometimes the time between iron pours is long. But I still
Yeah.
want to make work. And so I'm fortunate enough that I can make molds in my garage, but then
Mhm.
I might want to just cast some, and I had somebody on here a couple, maybe 2 years ago or something, a guy named John Poole, and he is an
Okay.
artist that was a foundry resident. And so he would make his molds and then the
Hmm.
foundry would pour them. And so
Okay.
he was, after I mean, he was in the I guess I say community circuit for a while, as that's how he started. He was a student of Wayne's.
Okay.
But then he landed this like dream residency at an iron for
Hmm.
foundry.
Hmm.
And so we had conversations about how sometimes it's the community, sometimes it's the networking, and sometimes it's the art and the
Yeah.
material. And so if iron is what you need to have your work be made out of, to speak your theory or your concepts, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be poured at an iron. But sometimes where it's poured and who it's with adds
Hmm.
meaning to the piece. Sometimes
Yeah.
not. And so I think that, well, or at least what I'm hearing from you is they're both great.
Well, they are, and I think also because like I think that was the thing, like having listened to like Durant's interview and Kelly Ludeking
Yeah.
and Alyssa Toninato and stuff like these are all people that like I met like years ago and respect and everything, and I'm just very aware of the fact that like when I was in my early 20s, I was privileged enough to go off on this kind of
Yeah.
journeyman's kind of adventure and you know, go off on all these sort of very exciting adventures and stuff. And to me, I don't know, because I kind of feel like it's the fact that like the fuel is unavailable over here. That's why we've
Mm.
like
Hmm.
predominantly switched. And it seems a shame that like future generations will like miss out on that. But then to come back to your point about like having access, because like once you can't get the Coke, it's like oh, well I don't know. If I think if John and Jeremy like crack this Cokeless cupola model, then
Hmm.
at least the version of that can still be provided to people. But yeah, really, like with how we're doing it, like you can just do it. Well, yeah, I pour with Necole or I pour with my brother, and that's fine. You know, like it works really well.
Yeah.
And yeah, and yeah, I wrote it down somewhere. Where did I write it down? So yeah, so to give you the hard sell, like it's say you can make your mold on Monday. depending on how prolific you are, you can cast it Monday night,
Oh,
finish it on like Tuesday or Wednesday, have it ready to install on Thursday, and go to your private view on Friday. Like
and that's your work
you can,
week.
yeah,
And
that's your
then you
work
have a
week.
weekend.
Exactly. And like, but that's my point. It's like, yeah, because that was the thing at ASU that a lot of people said about it, was the fact that, like, they had access to iron like twice a year,
Yeah.
and now they can just like fire up a furnace and have molten iron within like 2 hours, whenever they need it.
Yeah.
Which doesn't like detract from the other one,
No.
uh, but yeah, I think like you say, and also the other really nice thing that we like about this system is the fact that, like, in terms of variables and stuff, we can really control things like strictly much more like a bronze pour, where
Hmm.
you know your shells are all like regimented and big, and because like, I mean, there's a guy, well, he's coming down, this other founder, he's called Mark Pryor, and he's outside of Nibley, and his furnace actually runs on kerosene, but he's using a slightly different size burner. But he's melting a 90-kilo crucible. It's all on like a gantry hoist because it's
Yeah.
alive again. But again, he's melting that within like 2 hours, and it's
Mm-hmm.
the quality iron that he's producing. Um, and that's it. It's like with the pot that we have, we can pour like two large molds and like some small molds off
Yeah.
it, or like a couple dozen scratch tiles,
Yeah.
or to give people like a bit of a frame of reference for like size and scale. But again, like, if there's like two or three artists in a studio, and you know you, that's all you need, then
Yeah.
you can just do it yourselves. And yeah, you get with a bit of like care over the chemistry of the iron and stuff. And also, because the other one that always used to stump me was and I think I've been quite lucky because I haven't seen it in a while, but like, you go to the odd iron pour, and like, I don't know if I don't know if it's because they were melting bathtubs or whatever it was, but like, there'd be like lots and lots and lots of slag,
Mm.
um,
Hmm.
and it's when the slag would like get into the iron, but then people didn't have time to skim the pot properly
Yeah.
because of stuff. And to come back on me, it's like, well, I could put like a filter cup within my mold, and that would like catch all that. But
Yeah. So, yeah.
yeah, you get like slaggy iron or whatever,
Hmm.
or it
Yeah.
would be slightly. And yeah, you can really like be really controlled over it, and yeah, just make like a nice quality metal. And he's quite keen to, and this is with the invitational that we're doing, but he's quite keen to come down and start to look at metal composition, and possibly like trying to produce like ductile iron,
Hmm.
or maybe even like blends of steel or something.
Okay.
And that's kind of where we're trying to like go with it and stuff, for anyone who's interested, really. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And so I guess well, because I think we're at the part where we're going to be hot on the horizon. I would like you to go into a little bit of detail about your visit to Arizona, though, and I mean, you've
Oh
talked
yeah.
about it. We kind of glossed over it, but
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Okay, so basically, so my partner used to work in London, and when we were living in London, and our eldest daughter was still quite small, because well, they both have dual nationality because they're American and English.
uh-huh.
Uh, yeah, because of COVID and everything, like, the American family hadn't been able to get over there to see anyone,
Hmm.
stuff, and so we were like, well, it'd be really good to like go to America for like a chunk of time. Not like a year or anything, but like, like a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
Like a semester's worth, like 10 weeks. 10 weeks would be great.
Yeah.
And so we were looking into residencies over there, and there was this residency at this place called the Art Farm in Nebraska. I don't know if you've heard of it,
No.
but no, it had its day. Don't we went there, like, don't. I mean, yeah,
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. But so that's
basically, so we because her dad and her brother live in Seattle,
okay.
and saw the weather references. Sorry, and we flew,
It makes
and
sense
basically,
now, though. Okay.
yeah. So we were going to drive from Seattle to Nebraska,
Okay.
and the plan was, we'd spend a few days in Seattle catching up with family, and then we
Yeah.
go on this road trip. It would take about a solid week to get over there
Yeah.
with a car, because we were trying to work out like how we could get there by plane or like whatever else. And it was like, yeah,
Yeah.
catch two buses, and coach and stuff, and like, I've been, I lived on like the East Coast for like 4 years. I've been
Yeah.
down south,
Yeah.
kind of the Midwest.
Yeah.
Um, but and I went to Iron Tribe,
Yeah.
but that was the extent. I've never been to like the the proper like plains
Mm.
of America,
Hmm.
and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Like driving through Montana and Wyoming and everything. And anyway, so we went up to Idaho and we went across. Anyway, we get to the art farm and it's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. Like
Oh,
we get there and like everything's like overgrown. And the thing that kind of got me was the fact that like they'd advertised specifically as like family friendly or whatever. And yeah, they like yeah, no, but they're not at all. And we
okay.
had a newborn with us. Like Verity was like how old was Verity at the time? She was like 3 months old, I
Oh,
think.
wow. Yeah.
And so we had to like stay the night because it had gotten so late, and like no one was there to like greet us. And
Mm.
then
Hmm.
somebody eventually did, like, and we managed to find someone. But I mean, Nicole was saying it was like the rapture. Like you'd go around, you'd see these like studios with kind of studio spaces with kind of stuff in them, but it's like where, like literally, where are the people?
Sounds a little scary,
And
like scary. Like that's how a
yeah, it
horror
was.
film starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, well, I was just. It wasn't even so much that. I didn't have time to think about that. I was just taken aback by the fact that like, it was just rammed with like junk. There was just like
Okay.
junk everywhere
Yeah.
and stuff. And anyway,
So you're
but
like, we can't stay here.
well, the point is, I got to because I caught up with the guy, the director, the following morning, and I was like, yeah, we get like you basically put me in an impossible position. I can't stay here. And you know, like when somebody like gives you an answer that completely floors you, and you're just like, oh wow. And he was like, yeah. And it's like last year, like a raccoon got into one of the houses, and we just couldn't get him out. He was like running around the attic. It was a nightmare. And I was like, oh right, okay, fair enough. Well, that answers that one then. So
Man.
we just drove back to like the nearest town and
Yeah.
stayed there for a couple of days in like the most cleanest, nicest Airbnb
Yeah.
you've
And
ever stayed
regrouped.
in. Yeah, regrouped, and then emailed Mary because I'd taken this furnace to Berlin
Hmm.
and to show everyone, and like, oh yeah, it was great going to Berlin because I caught up with like, like there's George, there's Wayne,
Yeah.
Wayne liked my T-shirt I printed for my own pour. I was like, oh, there's a vote of confidence,
Yeah.
and saw Mary and Coral, and all these people I like really respect, and everyone's like really excited because like, oh wow, Crucible line, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think it would melt like say? But what happened was we driving over couldn't find we couldn't get oil in time because it was kind of like a last minute thing that we were going to do it because Verity was 7 weeks old at the time.
Okay.
But we were like, "Yeah, we'll do it. We'll take a week. We'll do it. Like I'll go. I'll take a friend for the driving and we'll go." But like I there was because of like since Brexit and stuff, there's this real gray area about like importing and exporting stuff.
Mm.
And oil. Anyway, so we didn't really want to get caught out. So I
No.
was like, well, we'll get some oil in Berlin, it'll be fine. And then it turned out there'd been like an oil shortage or like something.
Of
But
course. Yeah.
we managed to find some, and I guess it had like there was like water in it. And
Oh. My
so sorry, so this is the other thing, is that if you're running reclaimed oil through this system, you just have to get all the water out,
hmm.
which is easy to do. You use like a conical tank with like a spigot at the base, and you dump all your oil in. Like you run it through a screen first to get out the
Okay.
French fries and
Yeah.
stuff, but then
Yeah. Yeah.
chuck it all in. And you leave it for like a day, and what happens is the oil sits on top of the water because
Yeah.
oil floats on water.
Right.
And then when you open the spigot, the pressure of the oil pushes all the water out. And so as soon as you get oil at the spigot, you've got clean oil, and it
Okay.
works great.
Great.
But
Yeah.
we didn't have a way to like screen it, and so it's like, well, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Hmm.
And we lit the thing, and it melted it. But we had like a bloomery furnace, but you could hear like you could hear the water, and the flame was just kind of weak. And
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that was that. But I was like, but the presentation was like the following day, and I was like, right, I've got a video of our furnace working back in England. I'm gonna show this. This will be great. And so the slide of the video comes up, go to hit play on the video, and it starts buffering. I'm like, no, really, like it works in England, it works here. But
Yeah.
people were really interested, and so
Yeah.
Mary had seen, and she was interested as like proof of concept and stuff. And anyway, so we send this email to Mary because we were kind of thinking like at this residency, like I might like fly down for like a weekend and see people down there and then come back or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we then sent this because we've been in kind of brief talks with her, but we sent her this email of being like, can we please come and visit? Because we basically have been let down and we have like
Yeah.
5 weeks still before
Yeah.
we go to England. and I emailed David Lobdell and
Mm-hmm.
Rianne, and yeah, they all said, yeah, sure, come on down. It'd be great to see you. And this wasn't even specifically for like the waste oil furnace stuff. This was just like, we want to make this work while we're over here.
Yeah. Make the
If
best
you're
of the
having an iron
time you
pour,
have.
we come to your iron pour. And anyway, yeah. So we hit the road and like we went into Denver. And of course there was no snowstorms. We managed to get like all brand new leathers in Denver
Yeah.
in California. And then we drove down to Las Vegas, and like David Lobdell, God bless him, is a saint.
Yeah.
And we'd managed to find like a tiny like double single apartment in like the hotel
Uh-huh.
because they were fully booked. And he was like, "Hang on, leave it with me. I know the guy." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's right. You do know the guy." And so anyway, they stuck us in like the presidential honeymoon suite, which had like this. It had like this ensuite like room on it with like a full fridge freezer and like a kitchen and stuff. And we were there for like a week, but we managed to like make all our shells and stuff. And we had this like
Yeah.
BMW X3 that we just like rammed all this stuff into, and like I'm not sure how we managed to slot everybody in. But then yeah, we drove down and like we went through like the Painted Desert and
Wow. Yeah.
the Petrified Forest,
Hmm.
and got from the high desert down into like the low desert into Phoenix. And then yeah, we did the iron pour at Phoenix. We made work there,
Yeah.
talked to the students. So we made all these pieces, and then we closed the loop up back up to Idaho, and
Uh-huh.
then picked it up back over the mountains to Seattle. And it was just absolutely amazing, like completely impromptu 7 week road trip that we did with the girls.
Yeah.
And we're going to show you some of America. Well, we ended up going through like 10 states.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Around the whole of the Southwest, and like saguaro forests and everything else. But while I was at ASU, Mary had an old Crucible furnace, and I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh yeah, well we could convert that. Do you want
Try.
to do that? Because
Yeah.
that's interesting." And she was like, "Yeah, sure." And anyway, yeah, and then we kind of bounced back and forth with the conversations and stuff, and then it finally happened last October that yeah, I went back out for 2 weeks and worked with a guy called Chris Luper out there, who's yeah, he's a really interesting guy, and there's another guy. He was actually in Alfred as well. Bobby Zakaitis. Yeah, he's another good guy. But yeah, they yeah, we managed to like like get it working, and they had like a crucible to use for it, and we tested it on bronze first just to make sure it was
Yeah.
behaving,
Yeah. That's
which it
smart.
was.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and then we ran through a couple pots of iron, and we ended up casting. I made some larger forms, but I cast one in iron with the crucible furnace, and then I cast the other one at Ted's,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
welded them together. So you've got like both comparisons for the two different types of iron, which
Interesting.
yeah, which made like a nice piece. Like I was really pleased with how the piece turned out, and like the pour at Scottsdale was great. Like they get really nice iron off that cupola. I kind of wanted to use that anyway because we made work there the year before,
Okay.
which went on. But yeah, that was that whole kind of trip. So it kind of like happened over the last couple of years, and I guess this is what I mean about like the networking side of the community because
Hmm.
like yeah, it's super important to like go to conferences and meet people. I mean, I guess that would be like some advice for people, like just get out there and like talk to people and do like slightly interesting projects because you never know like where things are going to lead. And even like the thing in Nebraska, like I mean, I know it like didn't work out, but if we hadn't have like it would be because if we hadn't have had that there as like a thing to go and do,
Yeah.
we would have probably only like flown over for like 2 weeks to see family and flown back. So
Yeah.
there wouldn't be like that window to like go off and do this whole other thing. So
So a lot of
um
good did come from that, even though
oh
it
yeah,
was
no, it's been
it
great.
started
Yeah,
off
yeah,
as a disaster.
I know it was great, and I
Yeah.
mean I think as well, just like yeah, this guy's story about like this raccoon, it sounded like an utter nightmare, but like
Yeah.
but I think like yeah, it had its like time maybe like
Sure.
15, 20 years ago, and
Sure. Sure.
like everything,
There's
so
everything has cycles, but
absolutely,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, so
So,
we talked did we breeze over the hot on the horizon?
well, I think for us,
Yeah, what's going on?
we've got our open house
Yep. Mm-hmm.
next month. We're in a couple of different shows with pieces that we've cast through the Foundry. We've had quite a bit of commission work on, and I guess I think this is the thing for us because through lockdown we kind of had like a steady stream of like commissions building up, and people have come back, and another work has been coming in. But like the business is kind of getting to the stage now where, yeah, I think we're gonna like expand that and sort of double down and focus on that, and still make our work. I mean, we both teach, well, teach, but teach at different institutions and stuff. Like I'm
Yeah.
involved with
Yeah.
a place called West Dean, which is over in Chichester, which yeah, it's that's a really interesting school. They do like a lot of conservation and metalwork and stuff, and they have a fine arts program. But they also have like a horology course, so you can go there to learn how to make 19th century carriage clocks from
Oh.
scratch.
Oh.
They have like a luthier course, so you can go there and make like violins and guitars from like the ground up. And so there's like a
Wow.
lot of like cultural skills and crossover and stuff. And then they have these short courses, and we're kind of yeah, we're kind of like finding our
Yeah.
niche there. But yeah, they offer like 700 short courses in London and in Sussex, and yeah, we take our mobile foundry there and do stuff. And then yeah, we've been like shortlisted for a few different awards and stuff through doing the waste oil furnace at
Hmm.
ASU. And then there's also the Heritage Craft Association over here. They have like a green award that yeah, well, we'll just see if anything comes in, but we should know like in July what's going on with that. So yeah, so it's all pretty exciting. Well, I mean, it's all really exciting to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Like we just finished a piece the other day for a artist who found us through our Instagram handle, but he's based up in Soho. He bought like a 3D printed piece down. We cast it in aluminium foam. It's in a show in Paris at the moment. And I like you say, I think it's that thing of like if you're working with a material and you want access to a material and you really want to like get into the craft side and that side of like making stuff with the material, then yeah, you just want to remove as many variables as
Yeah.
possible and get to it as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
And yes, it's a different way of working, but
Mhm.
I think it, like I say, it's kind of where we are now. And I mean, we do still have half a ton of coke out the back, so in a couple of years, if there were a bunch of Americans that wanted to come over and we could do like a one more like iron pour for posterity with Nige.
Hurrah. Yeah, one more
Yeah, great,
last
yeah, one
hurrah.
for or whatever, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe, I
Well,
don't
we'll
know.
keep it
Yeah,
we'll be open to the universe and we'll,
yeah,
see what happens. Yeah.
yeah. Cool.
And so then you started giving us some advice, but I cut you off and was like, "No. Hot on the
Oh no,
horizon
it's fine.
first." But
So I think like because yeah, I don't know if so in terms of advice, I was going to say yeah, I always think like yeah, I say like being open to the universe, but also like I'm a big proponent to like paying it forward and like
mm,
giving people a chance because like within all of this, I remembered so there was over here there's an artist called Lawrence Edwards. He's had a lot of success lately. He does his like monumental like he works in bronze predominantly, but he's a Creek Men's series and they're like in they're on like they're in Australia at the moment and they're like over here and up in Somerset House and
mhm.
various other places and he's been picked up and recognized by like a blue chip gallery
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, he's really like his practice is really like performing forward. He's a bit older than us, but he used to, in conjunction with Coral, run an iron pour called US UK out
Yeah.
of his workshop.
Yes, cuz
East of England.
so in her
Mm.
interview Coral talks about this too. So anybody
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
listening or watching, you can get more detail from hers. But anyways, continue. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so in 2008, and this is, and again, so Bobby, who I mentioned in Arizona, he came to this as well, and Christian came as well. And Robert Harding. It was like a real blend of like people again who were kind of in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
But it was all at Lawrence's old gaff called Butley Mills Studios. And anyway, they had a cupola furnace there that they were running, but Coral wanted a second one so that you could have twice as much iron. And
Mhm. Yeah.
and it was really generous of her. Like I got invited to bring my furnace up, so we took Nige to USUK, and yeah, it was great. Like we spent like the week like making molds and working together as a group and stuff, and ran the furnaces really nicely. But yeah, I'd like interacted with him and stuff up to that point, and I'd also like interned up at the Scottish Sculptural Workshop by
Mhm.
comparison. And there's no disrespect to them, but the program director at the time, again,
Mhm.
I needed a letter of recommendation to get onto this grad program at Alfred.
Yeah.
And so I wrote to SSW and said, could I get a letter of recommendation because I did all this work for you over the summer? And they just turned around and said, no, you can't. Like,
Huh.
they had their
Okay.
reason.
Okay.
But then I was like, well, who else do I know? And so I
Yeah.
messaged Lauren. I was like, hey, look, I know, like, and he was like, yeah, absolutely, that's fine. And so
Great.
he gave me a recommendation, and I got into the program. And I guess my point is to people is like, you know, if you get success, or like, or when you get success, but like when you're more established in your career, just remember like the youngsters and
Yeah.
like, if people seem like, yeah,
Help
I'm all for like giving
help
people
them out.
chances and
Yeah.
trying to help people and stuff. So yeah, that'd probably be my bit of advice for what it's worth. But yeah, I've always remembered that, and yeah, I mean, because if I hadn't gone on the program with Alfred, well, would have done something else. But
Yeah.
it's kind of like led us to where we are now. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's good. And that's good for I think I might actually like it's funny
Mm,
like a lot of the advice I so the childhood stories and the advice are my two favorite parts of the like every single show. Um
mm,
and so a lot of the advice like I really do take to heart, but it's like interesting because I, that, remembering people that helped you before you were well established, like
mm.
I think that there might be some notes I should send or some messages I should send to some
Oh
people,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's like, because things have been going really well for me. And so just
yeah.
recently, and so, yeah, I probably needed to hear that. It's funny how when yeah, you hear what you
Mm.
need to hear when you need to hear it. So that's good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, some
Ah,
good advice.
so funny. Anyway, so you
Brilliant.
think we're ready to go on over to the after show? Talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
some super
So-
secret stuff.
yeah, I think so.
I
Yeah.
think we're doing good.
Yeah. I mean, I guess also like if anybody's because I know like we're publishing like I think there are some papers, and like I think the waste oil stuff is going to be coming to a conference near you soon. For my part, like I would quite like to get over to the Western Conference in October, or
San Diego. Yeah.
to us in the spring
Yeah.
if I can. And I'm hoping like if we win a couple of these awards, there'll be the funding to be able to do that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think Mary and ASU are going to roll out the oil furnace, and
To the
you know,
Western?
I'm not.
Or
Yeah, I think so, or maybe Sloss as well. I know Jeremy and John were working with Kristen on a cokeless cupola that they're
right.
taking to us as well. But yeah, I think, like I say, like this conversation just seems a lot more prevalent now, and yeah, I think people are just trying to like disseminate the information and the knowledge out there for people.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we can all carry on like casting iron, because I mean that's what it's about,
Really?
making
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
sculpture. So yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah, let's go to the after show. That sounds good.
All
Yeah,
right. All right. So everybody who's listening and watching, thanks so much. And Steve, thanks so much for letting me
yeah. Thank you.
hear your story. And I feel like I actually know you now, and I'm excited. Like I hope that I see you at the Western or at Sloss, because I'll be at both of them. So
Amazing. Okay, cool.
and
That'd be
hopefully
fun.
everybody that's listening and watching come to at least one of them, But we're going to go on over to the after show. If you want to join us, you know what to do. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening and watching. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, no, it's been great.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. This conversation doesn't have to end here. To gain access to the after show, where Steve and I continue our discussion, visit the website patreon.com/thepodcastiron. And for as little as $1 a month, supporters get access to the after show recordings from every episode that's ever been published ever. So if you're new here, the after show is just an extra 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes more, with each show's guest, where we talk a little more candidly and share at least one more story behind the privacy of a paywall. So yes, if you sign up now, you'll get access to listen to the after show from this episode and all of the after shows from all of our earlier episodes. And even $1 really will make a difference to subsidize the costs that I undertake to make this resource publicly available, and you get the private after shows. So it's a win for everyone. Well, in conclusion of this public portion of the episode, I hope you've enjoyed listening to this interview as much as I've enjoyed listening to all of the travels that Steve has traversed through on his iron journey, as well as the exciting things that he has developed for the future of crucible iron and waste oil furnaces. Steve, thank you so much for recounting your journey into becoming an artist, sculptor, founder, business owner with your partner, Necole, as well as becoming a father. You have so much to be proud of, and I was on the edge of my seat as you recounted the whole excursion that has been your life so far. I'm sure many of the other listeners were on the edges of their seats as well. I really hope to be able to see you and learn more from you in person at either the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance Conference or the National Conference at SLOS, or just sometime in the near future. I wish you and Necole the best of everything ever, and I can't wait to meet you in real life sometime soon. And now, thank you to the top supporters of this episode for helping me afford to continue offering this show. Thank you to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance for being a top supporter of the show. I'm so honored and encouraged to have your support. And thank you for all of the work that you do in service of the Western region of the US and its cast iron artists. Also, thank you SLOS Metal Arts for being a top supporter and for your year-round work as a national center for iron casting and metal art, and for offering our community visiting artist and resident artist opportunities, as well as hosting our national conference. And thank you to the Metal Museum for your support of this podcast and for offering our cast iron art community such an amazing exhibition and learning opportunities, as well as foundry apprenticeships. In my opinion, the Metal Museum is one of the premier places in the world to learn the art of iron casting, and to have a museum of this caliber exhibitioning works by artists in our tribe, it is such a great honor and a gift. So yes, in closing, thank you to all of our other individual supporters on Patreon. The funds that everyone there contribute are invaluable to help me to continue to put on this show. But if you don't have it in your budget to support the podcast Iron on Patreon, I understand. And so instead, if you could just please share this podcast with someone you think would be interested in listening or watching, and I'll appreciate that just as much. Anything and everything helps, and for that I say thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at thepodcastiron@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening and watching. I'm sending you all my love always, and I can't wait to share the next episode with you. I'll talk to you soon, and have a great day.